Kalen Voss felt the ground shake before he even saw the ship. A jagged shadow streaked across the gray sky of asteroid G19, crashing into the rocky plains near the colony with a thunderous roar. Sparks flew, dust clouded the air, and alarms blared across the settlement. Citizens scrambled, their eyes wide with fear, but Kalen didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the wreckage, his toolkit bouncing against his back, knowing every second counted. Through the smoke and debris he caught sight of her, the Dragon Queen. She was enormous, taller than the colony's tallest structure, her metallic scales glinting with strange, shifting colors. Her eyes burned like molten gold, and a low, vibrating hum radiated from her armor. Every step she took cracked the ground beneath her. The colony's people froze, staring in terror. Kalen's heart hammered, but he forced himself to focus. He noticed the armor, pulsing with unstable energy, small arcs of electricity crawling over her scales. If it failed completely, she could be destroyed in seconds. Or worse, the energy could explode, wiping out the nearby colony. Kalen didn't wait to analyze. He sprinted past fallen debris, ducked under a fragment of the ship's hull, and reached the broken edge of her armor. "Easy, steady," he muttered, sliding out a spanner. He moved with care, but the vibrations from her roar made the tools shake in his hands. Kalen had seen machines fail under far less pressure, but nothing like this. He was a human, a mechanic among humans, far smaller, far weaker than this alien queen, but he refused to step back. Courage wasn't about strength, it was about action when fear tried to freeze you. A sudden, deep roar burst from the Dragon Queen, unlike anything Kalen had heard. It wasn't just sound, it shook the air, distorted the landscape, even made small rocks levitate briefly. Kalen's ears rang, he stumbled. Sparks flew from the armor. His mind raced. One wrong move and he could fry alive. He steadied himself, adjusting the polarity of a small stabilizer in his hand, feeling the energy pulses sync with the armor. A flicker of calm, he had bought a few precious seconds. The Dragon Queen's gaze locked on him. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion and fury boiling over. "Who dares touch my armor?" Her voice wasn't words, it was a wave vibrating in his chest. Fear surged in him, but Kalen's hands didn't falter. He remembered his training: assess the risk, act decisively, and trust your mind even when the odds are impossible. He whispered, "I just want to help," and continued tightening the energy nodes. A sudden flare shot from a broken panel. Kalen flinched, but his quick instincts saved him. He caught the sparking conduit with a grounded metal rod, redirecting the energy safely. Sparks danced across the rocky ground, but he smiled briefly. Small victory. She hissed, a sound like molten metal scraping stone, yet she didn't attack. Not yet. Curiosity flickered in her gaze. Around him, colony workers ducked behind rocks, frozen in awe and terror. Kalen could feel their fear but also their hope. One human taking a stand against what should be impossible, that was enough to make others believe survival was still possible. His fingers worked frantically, but his mind was already racing ahead. Every adjustment had consequences. Misalign one conductor and the energy could overload. Misread one pulse and her armor could collapse mid-breath. Then came the pattern interrupt. A shard of twisted metal, kicked by the crash, shot up like a missile, aimed directly at Kalen. He didn't have time to think. His reflexes flared. He ducked and rolled, the shard slicing the ground inches from his face. The Dragon Queen hissed sharply, shifting her massive body, and the shard embedded itself in the armor instead of him. The armor groaned but didn't explode. Kalen blinked, heart racing, and realized he had survived a near-death moment using nothing but quick thinking. The strange energy pulses seemed to recognize him now, settling into a dull hum. For a fleeting second, Kalen glimpsed something almost human in her massive, glowing eyes: curiosity, confusion, maybe even a hint of respect. But before he could dwell on it, a distant rumble shook the asteroid. From the cratered horizon, a shadow moved, another ship, faster, smaller, and armed. The Dragon Queen stiffened, the energy in her armor surging violently. Kalen knew immediately, this was only the beginning. He tightened the last node, holding his breath. The armor stabilized, barely. Sweat dripped down his face, dust clinging to his clothes. The Dragon Queen lowered her massive head slightly, observing him, but her roar still lingered in the air like a living weapon. Kalen felt the weight of the impossible odds pressing down on him. One wrong move now could trigger disaster. One wrong move and not just he, but the colony, the Dragon Queen, everything, could be gone. Kalen gritted his teeth, gripping his tools. He had faced impossible machines before but never a living alien queen whose life, and fury, hung in the balance. One thought burned in his mind: he couldn't fail. Not now, not ever. Then, without warning, the Dragon Queen emitted a piercing low-frequency roar that seemed to rattle the very bones of the asteroid. Dust and small rocks exploded outward. Kalen stumbled but kept his balance, and as he glanced up, he realized something terrifying. The roar wasn't just anger, it was a signal. Something or someone was coming. And that was when the ground beneath them cracked. The ground trembled again, this time with more purpose, and Kalen realized it wasn't just the Dragon Queen, it was something moving behind the horizon. Shadows stretched across the jagged landscape, sharp and angular, glinting with deadly intent. Smaller ships, sleek and black, sliced through the dust cloud like predatory birds. Kalen's gut tightened. He knew this wasn't a scouting party, they were coming to strike. The Dragon Queen's eyes flicked toward the horizon, scales shifting in colors Kalen didn't fully understand. She growled low, a vibration that made his chest thrum, and the pulsing energy in her armor surged dangerously. Sparks crackled over the gaps in her plating. Kalen didn't hesitate. He sprinted closer, scanning the armor with his portable analyzer, noting every fluctuation. One wrong adjustment could fry her nervous system or trigger an energy backlash that would destroy the nearby colony. "Focus, Kalen," he muttered, biting back fear. One step at a time. The first of the enemy ships swooped in, firing beams that tore across the asteroid surface. Rocks exploded, sending shards into the air. Colony workers screamed, ducking for cover. Kalen dodged one of the shards himself, rolling to safety behind a fractured support beam. His toolkit rattled against his back, but he didn't stop. Every second counted. He knelt, hands flying over the armor nodes, improvising a stabilization sequence he had never tried before. The Dragon Queen shifted her massive form, swiping a claw and inadvertently throwing a jagged piece of metal toward Kalen. He rolled again, narrowly avoiding it, then realized something. She wasn't attacking him, at least not directly. Her focus was on the incoming ships. That hesitation was his chance. If he could stabilize her armor even partially, she might survive the first strike. Kalen worked furiously. He connected a makeshift energy shunt to one of the armor's exposed conduits. Sparks erupted, searing the air, and for a moment he feared the worst. But the conduit held. A low hum replaced the violent crackle. One mini payoff achieved. Kalen allowed himself a brief smile before the second wave of danger struck. One of the enemy ships broke formation, hurtling toward the colony itself. Kalen's heart raced. If it hit, the armor's energy could overload, vaporizing the surrounding area. Without thinking, he grabbed a spare energy reflector from his belt, aimed it, and redirected the incoming beam. It slammed harmlessly into a rock wall, sending a shower of debris into the air. The Dragon Queen's massive head turned sharply toward him, eyes glowing brighter. Kalen's pulse hammered, but he had bought a few seconds for everyone to regroup. The Dragon Queen's hum grew louder, her scales shifting faster as if responding to him. Kalen realized the armor wasn't just mechanical, it was semi-biological, reacting to proximity, touch, even intent. Every movement he made affected her balance, her energy, even her mood. One misstep and he could anger her, possibly fatally. Suddenly, a shrill whistle cut through the chaos, a signal Kalen didn't recognize. From the shadowed ridge, a new figure emerged. A smaller creature, no taller than a human but covered in iridescent scales, darted toward the Dragon Queen. Kalen froze. It was fast, moving with intelligence that suggested a plan. The Dragon Queen's eyes narrowed, and her roar cut across the battlefield like lightning. The creature stopped mid-air, trembling. Kalen realized it was not hostile. It was a scout, perhaps a messenger. But what was it trying to do? Kalen had no time to ponder. A massive energy surge shot from the Dragon Queen's armor, triggered by the sudden approach of the scout. Sparks flew, rocks shattered. He leapt forward, pressing a stabilizing plate into the armor just in time. The surge dissipated harmlessly, but the tension in the air was palpable. The Dragon Queen paused, sniffing the air, scanning the horizon, then suddenly froze as if sensing something deeper. Then came the next shock. One of the enemy ships had landed a direct strike on the colony's energy grid. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and Kalen felt the familiar sting of panic among the workers. Without power, the colony defenses would fail, leaving everyone exposed. Kalen gritted his teeth, his hands still on the armor. There was no time to retreat, no time to second-guess himself. He sprinted toward the main grid, weaving between falling debris, sparks dancing across the rocky ground. He reached the control panel, heart hammering. Improvising, he rerouted the remaining power through a series of feedback loops, risking an overload. The lights steadied, the alarms quieted slightly, and a low hum of stability returned. Mini payoff achieved again, but he barely had time to breathe. The enemy ships weren't done. Another energy beam scorched the ground near him, sending a cloud of dust into his eyes. He coughed, blinking through the grit, and realized the Dragon Queen was moving, heading toward the colony, her massive claws tearing into the rock to create a path. Kalen's mind raced. If she reached the colony without him stabilizing the armor further, her energy could erupt in catastrophic feedback. If he left the grid unprotected, the colony could be destroyed. The impossible odds pressed on him, heavier than ever. And through it all, the alien queen's gaze never left him, a mixture of fury, confusion, and hesitation. Then, without warning, the ground shook beneath them again, stronger this time. Kalen stumbled but stayed upright, realizing the enemy fleet had just revealed another weapon. A massive shadow rising over the horizon, its energy pulsating like a heartbeat. The Dragon Queen tensed, the hum of her armor skyrocketing, and Kalen felt it through his fingertips. One misstep now, one wrong connection, and everything, her, the colony, even him, could be obliterated in an instant. Kalen swallowed hard, fingers tightening on the controls. He had survived the first wave, he had saved the armor once, but the real test was just beginning. The enemy wasn't finished. The Dragon Queen wasn't calm yet. And Kalen realized with a cold, sinking certainty that nothing he had faced before could prepare him for what came next. The shadow above moved closer, and a terrifying, almost unnatural hum began to join the roar of the Dragon Queen. Kalen's chest heaved as he crouched behind the fractured hull of the colony's energy grid. The shadow looming over the horizon was enormous, darker than the asteroid's jagged cliffs, and vibrating with power that made his teeth rattle. The Dragon Queen stiffened beside him, massive claws digging into the rocky ground. Her armor's energy pulsed wildly, reacting to the new threat. Sparks leapt from the gaps in her plating. Kalen's mind raced, searching for a solution faster than panic could take hold. "What is that?" a worker shouted from behind, voice trembling. Kalen didn't answer. There was no time for words. He felt the hum of her armor under his fingertips, chaotic and unpredictable. It was alive, almost sentient. Every adjustment he made now could mean the difference between survival and total annihilation. The shadow revealed itself. A colossal alien war drone, its surface covered in jagged crystal-like plating, thrumming with unstable energy. Its eyes glowed red, scanning the colony with calculated intent. Kalen's stomach dropped. One beam from that thing could shred the colony or trigger catastrophic feedback from the Dragon Queen's armor. He had seconds. Then a thought struck him, a risky, desperate idea. The Dragon Queen's armor wasn't just armor. It was a living interface responding to touch, motion, and intent. If he could synchronize its energy output with the drone's power frequency, he might be able to repel it without fully engaging in combat. It was dangerous, nearly impossible, but it was the only chance. Kalen moved closer to the Dragon Queen, careful to avoid her twitching claws. "I need you to trust me," he whispered, more to himself than to her. His hands worked over the exposed conduits, connecting makeshift energy regulators and reconfiguring feedback loops on the fly. Sparks erupted, arcs of energy dancing across her scales. The Dragon Queen's massive eyes narrowed, suspicion and fury radiating like heat from molten metal, but she didn't attack. She watched, tense but still restrained. A low hum rose from the war drone as it advanced, each step shaking the ground beneath them. Kalen adjusted the energy nodes, feeling the vibrations pulse through his arms, through the armor, through him. The Dragon Queen's hum began to stabilize, responding to his movements. He gritted his teeth. "Come on, come on." Suddenly the war drone fired a pulse. Kalen reacted instantly, redirecting it through the Dragon Queen's armor. Energy lanced across the ground, striking the drone's plating. Sparks exploded, the crystal surface cracking under the redirected energy. The drone faltered. Mini payoff. One successful strike without destroying the colony. Kalen allowed himself a flicker of relief, but the drone recovered almost instantly, its eyes burning brighter, more furious. The Dragon Queen shuddered violently, her armor overloading slightly, sending arcs of electricity into the air. Kalen was thrown backward, sliding across jagged rocks, toolkit clattering away. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he pushed himself up. The drone moved faster now, anticipating his next move. Kalen realized the synchronization he attempted wasn't perfect. He needed to understand the armor's internal logic, not just its surface conduits. He crouched again, studying the armor. Then he saw it, faint, glowing circuits running beneath the scales, almost like veins pulsing rhythmically. Each pulse corresponded to a thought or intention of the Dragon Queen. The armor wasn't just a suit, it was a neural interface. He could guide her energy if he could match the rhythm of her heartbeat. But he had never done anything like this. Every second was a gamble. Kalen placed a hand on the nearest scale, feeling the subtle vibrations. He concentrated, moving the regulators in time with the pulses. Sparks crackled, the hum grew, and slowly the energy stabilized. The Dragon Queen stiffened, then leaned slightly into his touch, a silent acknowledgement that she was letting him guide the armor. Mini payoff, he had partial control. The war drone fired again, faster and more violently. Kalen synchronized the armor's pulse with the drone's energy frequency. Time seemed to stretch as sparks and light collided in a violent display. Then a surge, Kalen redirected the blast directly into the drone's core. A massive explosion shook the ground, sending shards of crystal and rock flying. The drone collapsed in a smoking heap. Victory but temporary. The Dragon Queen's hum shifted, less frantic, almost curious. Her eyes, golden and molten, locked onto Kalen. For the first time he saw something other than rage, acknowledgement, trust, maybe even respect. He allowed himself a moment, chest heaving, to feel that connection, but it was cut short. A piercing shriek echoed from above. More shadows appeared on the horizon, faster, larger, this time multiple drones coordinating. Kalen's stomach sank. The battle was far from over. The Dragon Queen tensed beside him, energy now stable but volatile, ready to explode if he made a single mistake. Kalen swallowed hard, scanning the approaching threat. He realized something else, a chilling truth. These weren't random attackers. The sabotage, the war drones, the malfunctioning armor, they were all connected. Someone or something wanted the Dragon Queen down, and now Kalen was in the middle of it. If he failed, not just the colony but the Dragon Queen herself could be lost. He looked at her, massive form tense, scales flickering. He met her glowing eyes and whispered, "I won't let them take you." She blinked once, slowly. Not agreement, not submission, but recognition. Kalen drew a deep breath, preparing for the impossible. He had survived the first waves, stabilized her armor, and guided her power, but the real fight was only beginning. From the horizon, a massive rumble vibrated through the asteroid. Something larger than all the drones, larger than any weapon Kalen had seen, was approaching. And in that instant, he realized the Dragon Queen's fury was nothing compared to what was coming. Kalen's hands clenched into fists. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a human mechanic. But humans survived by thinking, by acting, by refusing to quit, even when everything was impossible. And right now he had no choice but to do exactly that. The shadow above stretched further, revealing an outline that made Kalen's blood run cold. A colossal alien ship, alive with energy, descending toward the colony. And the Dragon Queen, for all her size and power, let out a low, vibrating growl, not of anger but of warning. Kalen knew immediately, the next moment could decide everything. Kalen's heart pounded as the massive alien ship hovered above the colony, casting a shadow darker than the deepest canyon. Energy arcs licked the asteroid's surface, making the ground tremble underfoot. The Dragon Queen's armor pulsed violently, responding to the ship's energy with wild, unpredictable surges. Kalen felt the hum through his fingertips like a living thing, every vibration a warning. One misstep, one false adjustment, and both she and the colony could be vaporized instantly. He gritted his teeth. There was no time for fear. He sprinted toward the central energy conduit, dodging falling rocks and shards of debris from the Dragon Queen's claws. Sparks sprayed in all directions as her armor flared and stabilized repeatedly, reacting to the colossal presence above. Kalen's lungs burned, but his mind worked faster than ever. He had to find a way to turn the Dragon Queen's raw power into a shield, to protect both her and the colony. "Think, Kalen, think," he muttered, scanning the conduit. The alien ship emitted pulses, each faster and stronger than the last. He realized it wasn't just shooting blindly, it was scanning, analyzing, predicting the Dragon Queen's response. The enemy was intelligent, calculating. The colony's defenses alone wouldn't hold. He needed to act. With a bold decision, he attached a series of makeshift feedback regulators to the armor's neural interface. He connected the colony's energy grid to the Dragon Queen's armor, forming a live loop. Sparks flew across the ground as power surged in both directions. Kalen gritted his teeth, feeling every vibration as if the armor's heartbeat was his own. "Come on," "Stabilize," he whispered, guiding the pulses with every ounce of his skill and instinct. The alien ship fired again, massive energy beams slamming toward the colony. Kalen reacted instantly, redirecting the blast through the Dragon Queen's armor. Energy arcs exploded around her, lighting the rocky terrain with deadly brilliance. She roared, a terrifying vibration that made Kalen's chest ache, but instead of chaos, her energy now flowed like a controlled river. The beams struck the ground harmlessly, throwing debris at the incoming drones. Mini payoff, the first wave deflected. But the enemy wasn't done. More drones descended, moving faster and more coordinated than before. Kalen realized he couldn't just block. They would overwhelm them if he didn't take the offensive. His eyes darted to the Dragon Queen. Her massive wings flexed and he saw an opening. Her sonic roar could be amplified through the energy conduit, directed at the drones like a weapon. It was risky. If misaligned, the feedback could destroy everything including him. "Now or never," he muttered. He adjusted the regulators precisely, syncing with her neural pulses. The Dragon Queen tilted her head, letting him guide the energy. Kalen felt the connection deepen, a silent understanding forming between human and alien. Sparks surged across the armor. He gritted his teeth and triggered the amplification. The sonic blast erupted in a wave of raw power, scattering the drones like paper in a storm. Some were vaporized instantly, others thrown into jagged rocks with deafening crashes. The ground quaked, dust and smoke blinding the colony for a moment, but when it cleared, Kalen realized the enemy's smaller units had been decimated. Mini payoff, partial victory, but the colossal alien ship still hovered above, pulsing with menace. Kalen's shoulder burned where a shard had grazed him earlier. Sweat dripped into his eyes, but he didn't falter. He adjusted the regulators again, pushing the limits of both his body and mind. The Dragon Queen's hum became a steady, controlled vibration, energy flowing like water under his guidance. He felt her trust and determination, almost as if she were lending him her strength. Then came the twist, a sudden, piercing scream from the colossal ship. Energy tendrils erupted from its hull, striking the asteroid with precision. The Dragon Queen flinched, her armor destabilizing violently. Kalen's stomach dropped. If he didn't act instantly, the feedback would fry her neural interface, ending everything. He dove toward the nearest control node, manually rerouting energy flows. Sparks flew, arcs of electricity danced across the rocky ground, and Kalen's fingers worked faster than thought, guided by pure instinct. With a final, desperate adjustment, the armor stabilized. The Dragon Queen flexed her wings, releasing a controlled pulse that knocked the energy tendrils harmlessly aside. Kalen collapsed onto one knee, chest heaving, adrenaline screaming through his veins. He had done it. She was alive. The colony was safe for now. Mini payoff, success against impossible odds. The Dragon Queen lowered her massive head to Kalen's level. Her glowing eyes, once pure fury, now reflected cautious respect. For the first time she spoke, not through vibration or roar, but a thought he could almost feel in his mind. "You are unlike the others." Kalen swallowed hard, feeling the weight of that acknowledgement. He had earned it not through strength alone, but through courage, intelligence, and relentless determination. But there was no time to celebrate. The colossal ship hadn't retreated. It hovered silently, larger and more threatening than before. A pulse of energy shot from it, striking the horizon and sending jagged rocks tumbling toward the colony. Kalen realized with chilling clarity that this fight was far from over. Whoever controlled that ship had greater power, more firepower, and a plan that went beyond mere drones. He glanced at the Dragon Queen, whose massive chest heaved with controlled fury. Her hum now synced with his regulators, a living conduit ready to fight or defend. Kalen straightened, gripping his tools. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was the bridge between the colony and a being powerful enough to destroy or save them all. A rumble beneath the asteroid echoed through the air. The shadow of the colossal ship shifted unnaturally, almost as if it were alive. Kalen's stomach tightened. Something was coming from within that ship. Something bigger, more dangerous than anything he had faced. He took a deep breath, feeling the raw energy of the Dragon Queen pulsing beneath his hands. This was the moment where courage mattered most. He had survived waves of impossible danger, stabilized an alien queen's armor, and deflected a deadly assault. But the next move would decide everything. Kalen's eyes narrowed. He wasn't going to wait for the enemy to act. Humans survived because they acted, because they fought when no one else could. And now, with the Dragon Queen at his side, he was ready to turn the impossible into survival. And then, from the colossal ship, A beam of pure energy sliced through the atmosphere toward the colony, brighter than the asteroid's sun. Kalen's heart leapt. He had seconds to act. Every thought, every instinct, every ounce of human ingenuity would be tested in the next heartbeat. The Dragon Queen roared, and Kalen knew one thing for certain. Failure was not an option. Kalen's pulse thundered in his ears as the colossal beam descended, searing the air above the colony. The Dragon Queen's wings flared wide, casting immense shadows over the rocky plains. Energy pulsed through her armor, but Kalen's hands were steady on the regulators, guiding the flow, merging her power with the colony's grid. Every nerve screamed, but retreat was not an option. "Hold together," he muttered almost to himself. The Dragon Queen's massive head lowered slightly, almost as if acknowledging his command. Sparks danced across her scales, arcs of electricity snapping toward the incoming energy. The beam struck her armor, and for a heartbeat, Kalen thought it was over. The interface trembled violently, and a burst of raw energy shot toward him. But he held firm, redirecting it through the feedback loop he had engineered. The beam fractured mid-air, splitting into harmless fragments that scorched the ground around the colony but caused no permanent damage. Kalen exhaled sharply, relief mingled with adrenaline. Mini payoff. The colony was alive, intact, and the Dragon Queen remained standing, her massive form trembling but stable. Then came the unexpected twist. The Dragon Queen lowered her massive head, eyes locking onto Kalen. Her roar began low and vibrating, but instead of fury, it carried recognition, understanding, even gratitude. Kalen stepped closer, carefully adjusting the final energy nodes on her armor. Sparks crackled, but the hum shifted from chaotic to harmonious. For the first time, the alien queen seemed calm, almost human in her awareness. You stabilized her," one of the colony workers whispered, awe and fear mingling in his voice. Kalen didn't answer. Words were useless now. He felt the weight of what he had done. One human mechanic had faced an impossible alien force, synchronized with a being beyond comprehension, and saved countless lives. HFY wasn't just courage. It was ingenuity, determination, and the refusal to yield in the face of certain danger. The colossal alien ship didn't retreat. Instead, it hovered silently, energy pulsating like a living heartbeat. Kalen's stomach sank. This was not just a fight, it was a warning. Whoever controlled that ship had not expected resistance, not from a human, not from a Dragon Queen, and not from a colony that should have been powerless. Kalen's eyes met the Dragon Queen's. She lowered her massive wing, shielding the colony, and emitted a low, resonating hum. Kalen felt it through the regulators, guiding the pulse with precision. He redirected the energy, creating a controlled resonance that neutralized the incoming threat, at least temporarily. Mini payoff. The immediate danger was deflected, giving the colony a chance to recover. Then, as he adjusted the final conduit, something remarkable happened. The Dragon Queen leaned closer, massive head grazing the rocky ground, and nudged Kalen gently, not aggressive, not threatening, but deliberate. Her eyes glowed brighter, molten gold reflecting his own determination. He understood instantly. She had accepted him as an ally, a partner, maybe even as one of her own. HFY wasn't about domination. It was about earning trust, building bonds across impossible divides. Kalen allowed himself a small, exhausted smile. The colony erupted in cheers, workers and settlers spilling from hiding places to witness the impossible. A human and a Dragon Queen, side by side, facing an enemy no one else could hope to challenge. Sparks from the Dragon Queen's armor lit the sky like fireworks. His heart swelled with pride. Humanity's courage had turned what seemed like certain destruction into survival. But even in triumph, Kalen felt the tension. The colossal alien ship remained above, energy pulsing rhythmically as if measuring the Dragon Queen's strength, and more importantly his. It wasn't defeated, it was observing. Kalen realized the danger wasn't over. Whoever, or whatever, controlled it was aware now, and they wouldn't wait long to test him again. He glanced around at the colony, faces filled with awe and gratitude. He had done the impossible, but the stakes had only grown. He looked back at the Dragon Queen, her massive eyes watching him as if expecting his next move. Kalen nodded slightly, feeling a surge of resolve. Humans survived because they adapted, because they acted when others froze. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. He was a mechanic, but right now that was enough. A distant rumble echoed through the asteroid, faint but deliberate. Kalen's chest tightened. The alien ship shifted slightly, its energy thrumming like a heartbeat. He realized with cold certainty, this was only the beginning. The mysteries behind the drones, the ship, and the energy anomalies were far from solved. He had won today, but the larger war, the deeper threat, was still out there. The Dragon Queen leaned down, massive eyes fixed on the horizon, and let out a low, vibrating growl, not of rage but of readiness. Kalen's hand hovered over the regulators. He didn't smile. He didn't relax. Victory was a moment, not a guarantee. Humanity thrived in moments like this, in the split second when courage and ingenuity determined survival. And Kalen knew he would rise again no matter the odds. As the colony began repairing damage, Kalen felt the hum of the Dragon Queen's armor settle into a steady rhythm beneath his hands. He had bridged two worlds, stood against the impossible, and survived where others would have perished. HFY wasn't a boast, it was the truth. Humans could shine even when the odds defied reason. From the horizon, a faint shimmer appeared, another massive silhouette far larger than the previous drones, moving in the darkness of space toward the asteroid. Kalen's stomach tightened. A new threat, bigger, more mysterious, approaching fast. He glanced at the Dragon Queen, her golden eyes reflecting his determination. "We'll face them," he whispered, gripping his tools. And with that, the asteroid fell into tense silence, the sun casting long shadows across the colony. But Kalen knew one thing with absolute certainty. The battle wasn't over and humanity would rise again. A hum, a pulse, and the Dragon Queen's armored form vibrated in resonance with his heartbeat. Two beings united against the impossible, ready for what came next. The screen of the asteroid colony's command panel flickered faintly, showing distant movement in orbit. Something massive, unknown, and approaching fast. Kalen's jaw tightened. One human had faced the impossible and survived. But the next chapter of this fight was already coming.